The fluorescent lights buzzed softly as Alex stepped into the tiny thrift store, the scent of aged fabric and polished wood hanging in the air. He ran a hand through his messy brown hair, his hoodie slightly oversized, hiding his thin frame. The bell above the door jingled behind him, announcing his arrival to the sleepy cashier who barely looked up from her book. "Hey guys, what's up? Before we get into this crazy story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You're not going to believe what happens next," Alex muttered to himself, already envisioning how he'd tell this on his channel later. He had always been drawn to thrift stores. The idea that every item had a history intrigued him. As he wandered through the narrow aisles, his fingers skimmed over racks of worn denim, vintage band tees, and faded jackets. He wasn't looking for anything in particular, just killing time before his shift at the gas station. Then he saw it. Hanging at the far end of the store, almost hidden between two bulky winter coats, was a dark brown leather jacket. It wasn't flashy, not designer, but something about it felt different. The leather was cracked, the cuffs frayed, and the inside lining was torn in places, but it had character. A story. He pulled it off the rack and slipped it on. Perfect fit. $5, the old cashier grunted when he brought it to the counter. "Seriously?" Alex raised an eyebrow. She smirked. "No one's bought that thing in years. You must be the only one who likes old junk." Alex shrugged, handed her a crumpled bill, and walked out with his new find. As he made his way home, he couldn't shake the strange feeling creeping up his spine. The jacket felt heavier than it should, like there was something sewn into the lining. His fingers absent-mindedly traced the seams, and he could swear, was there something inside? By the time he reached his small apartment, curiosity had taken over. He threw his bag onto the couch and turned on his desk lamp, illuminating the worn fabric of the jacket. His heart thumped as he ran his hands along the inside, pressing against the lining. Then he felt it, a lump. His pulse quickened. He wasn't imagining things. Grabbing a small pair of scissors, he carefully snipped at the stitches along the inner pocket. The thread gave way easily, the fabric parting to reveal something wrapped tightly in old, yellowed plastic. With shaking hands, he peeled it open. His breath caught in his throat. Inside the plastic was a stack of $100 bills, thick, crisp, and bound together with a faded bank strap. His mind went blank. What the? His heart pounded in his ears. This was real money, not a couple of bucks, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe more. But that wasn't all. As he pulled the stack out, something else slipped onto his lap. A small, folded piece of paper. He opened it slowly. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, and in faded blue ink. For simple words sent a chill down his spine. "If you find this, run." His blood ran cold. Run? From what? From who? Alex's hands trembled as he looked back at the pile of cash, then at the cryptic note. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. What had he just stumbled into? And more importantly, was someone looking for it? Alex's fingers clenched around the note, his pulse hammering in his ears. The words, "If you find this, run," burned into his mind. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to take a deep breath. Maybe it was a joke, some weird prank left behind by the jacket's previous owner. But then his eyes flickered back to the money. Stacks of crisp $100 bills bound together. There was nothing funny about that. This was serious. His apartment suddenly felt too quiet, too still. The air hummed with an unfamiliar tension, like something unseen was watching him. He stood up, pacing the room, jacket still in hand. He needed to think. First, the money. There had to be at least 50, maybe 60 grand here. Maybe more. It wasn't just some forgotten stash. It had been deliberately hidden. Then the note. Run? Run from what? The police? A criminal? Someone dangerous? His chest tightened. Was he in trouble just for finding it? A sharp knock at the door made him jump. His breath caught. He wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment he didn't move. His mind screamed at him to stay quiet, to pretend he wasn't home. Another knock. Louder this time. His heart pounded as he tiptoed toward the door. Peeking through the peephole, He saw a man in a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, face shadowed under a baseball cap. Alex's stomach twisted. He didn't recognize him. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just someone from the building. Then the man shifted slightly, revealing something glinting at his hip. A gun. Cold fear crashed over him like a wave. Who was this guy? And how did he find him? Alex backed away from the door as quietly as possible. His mind raced. He needed to get out. Now, carefully, he shoved the money back inside the jacket, stuffing the plastic-wrapped bundle into his backpack. He snatched his phone, gripping it tightly, his thumb hovering over the emergency dial. Another knock, this time slower, more deliberate. Alex forced himself to move, creeping toward the window. His apartment was on the second floor. Not ideal, but not impossible. He slid the window open, feeling the cold night air rush in. A voice from outside the door sent chills down his spine. Alex! His blood froze. Whoever this was, they knew his name. His mind screamed for him to move. He swung a leg over the window ledge, gripping the frame tightly. Just as he was about to lower himself down, his phone buzzed violently in his pocket. He nearly dropped it. Glancing down, he saw an unknown number flashing on the screen. For a second, he hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, he answered. A low voice, calm but firm, came through the speaker. Do exactly as I say if you want to live. His breath hitched. Who are you? No time. That man at your door? He's not alone. Get out. Now. Alex didn't wait for an explanation. He dropped his phone into his pocket, swung his other leg over the ledge, and pushed off. The fall was short, but he landed hard, rolling onto his side with a sharp gasp. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he had no time to dwell on it. Above him, the apartment door creaked open. Alex didn't look back. He scrambled to his feet and ran. Alex sprinted through the dimly lit alleyway, his breath ragged, his mind spinning. The weight of his backpack, of the money inside, seemed heavier with every step. His pulse pounded in his ears as he darted past overflowing dumpsters and abandoned shopping carts. His only thought, get away. The stranger on the phone had been right. The man at his door wasn't alone. As Alex had hit the ground, he caught a glimpse of another figure stepping into the hallway, bigger, bulkier, moving with the confidence of someone who had done this before. Who were they? Cops? Gangsters? Someone who had been looking for this jacket all along? He didn't stop running long enough to find out. His sneakers pounded against the pavement as he reached the end of the alley, where it opened up onto a quiet street. A gas station sat across from him, its neon lights flickering. A few cars rumbled by, their drivers oblivious to the chase unfolding in the shadows. Alex's instincts screamed at him to keep moving, but he forced himself to slow down, trying to blend in. He pulled the hood of his sweatshirt up and ducked his head as he crossed the street. The phone in his pocket vibrated again. With a shaky hand, he pulled it out. Same unknown number. He answered. Who the hell are you? A pause. Then the voice from before, still calm, still firm. You need to listen carefully. Alex glanced over his shoulder. No sign of the men yet. I'm listening. They know who you are. They know what you found. And they won't stop until they have it. His grip tightened on the phone. What is this? Drug money? Mafia? FBI? The voice exhaled. Not over the phone. You need to get to a safe place. Now. Safe. Alex let out a short, bitter laugh. I don't have a safe place. A brief silence. Then, there's a bus station 2 blocks south. Go there. Don't use your credit card. Pay in cash. Get out of town. Why should I trust you? Because if you don't, you won't live long enough to regret it. A chill crawled up Alex's spine. He knew fear. He'd grown up with it. Eviction notices, debt collectors, nights spent lying awake, wondering if his mom would lose her job again. But this was something different. This was life or death. He swallowed hard, eyes darting to the gas station. Inside, a lone cashier stood behind the counter, scrolling through his phone. An idea struck. I need supplies, Alex muttered. more to himself than the voice on the phone. A burner phone. A hoodie. Something to change my look. A beat of silence. Then, almost approvingly, smart, but move fast. Alex hung up and shoved his phone deep into his pocket. He ducked into the gas station, keeping his head down. The cashier barely looked at him as he grabbed a black hoodie from a clearance rack, a pair of cheap sunglasses, and a prepaid flip phone hanging from a display near the register. His fingers trembled as he counted out the cash. $5 for the jacket, 60 grand hidden inside, and now he was running for his life. As he left the store, he stole another glance down the street. Still no sign of the men. But that didn't mean they weren't coming. The bus station. 2 blocks. He could make it. Alex adjusted the backpack on his shoulders, pulled the hood up over his head, and started walking. Fast. He didn't notice the black sedan idling at the corner. Didn't see the man in the passenger seat lift a phone to his ear. Didn't hear the quiet voice say, "We have him." But he felt it, the hairs rising on the back of his neck. The creeping sensation that, no matter how fast he ran, he was already running out of time. Alex's stomach twisted as he walked, every nerve in his body screaming at him to move faster. The bus station was close, just 2 blocks. But he could feel it now. The weight of unseen eyes. The slow, creeping dread of being hunted. He resisted the urge to turn around. Don't act suspicious. Keep moving. The voice on the phone had said these people wouldn't stop. And if they were willing to track him to his apartment, they wouldn't hesitate to corner him on the street. He clutched his backpack tighter. The money inside suddenly felt like a curse rather than a miracle. As he crossed an empty intersection, the sound of tires rolling slowly behind him sent a jolt of panic through his chest. He couldn't help himself. He glanced over his shoulder. A black sedan. Tinted windows. Moving too slow to be normal. His pulse spiked. They found me. For a split second, he considered running. But that would confirm what they already suspected, that he knew something. That he had the jacket. Instead, he made a sharp turn into a convenience store. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and an old security camera blinked in the corner. The place smelled like stale coffee and mop water. 2 teenage girls stood by the snack aisle, giggling over something on their phones. An old man at the register counted out change. Normal. Safe. But for how long? Alex ducked behind a display of energy drinks, his breathing shallow. Through the glass storefront, he watched as the sedan rolled to a stop across the street. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out, not bulky like the guy at his apartment. This one was leaner, sharper. Dressed in dark jeans and a fitted jacket, his face unreadable. He wasn't looking at the store. Not yet. He was scanning the street, eyes sweeping for any sign of movement. Alex's fingers clenched around the burner phone in his pocket. He had to move. Fast. But how? Then an idea. He yanked the hoodie from his backpack, the one he'd just bought from the gas station. Pulling it over his head, he stuffed his old one deep into a trash bin near the door. It wasn't much of a disguise, but it was something. The automatic doors slid open. Alex's breath hitched. The man from the car stepped inside. Alex turned away, pretending to browse the refrigerated section. Stay calm. Stay invisible. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Then a voice. Smooth. Casual. But laced with something colder underneath. Hey, man. Alex's stomach dropped. He didn't turn. Didn't react. The man took another step closer. You see a kid come in here? Brown hair. Backpack. Alex's heart pounded against his ribs. The cashier barely looked up from his newspaper. The old man at the register pocketed his change. No one seemed to care. The teenage girls giggled again. One of them turned, her gaze flickering toward Alex. Her brow furrowed slightly, like she recognized something. Alex panicked. Before she could say a word, he grabbed a random bottle of soda and strode toward the counter, keeping his head low. The cashier barely glanced at him. $2. Alex dug out some crumpled cash and slapped it on the counter. His fingers fumbled, nearly dropping the bottle. Behind him, the man kept watching. Alex forced himself to move casually as he took his change and turned toward the exit. 1 step. 2. Just as he reached the door, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Alex stiffened. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. The giggling stopped. The air went still. Then the man's grip tightened. "Let's take a walk." Alex acted without thinking. His body moved on instinct, years of running from school fights, dodging rent collectors, slipping away from trouble when it got too close. He yanked free and shoved the man backward, hard. The guy staggered, nearly knocking over a display of snack bags. Alex bolted. The doors slid open, and he exploded into the street, running full speed toward the bus station. Shouts erupted behind him. He didn't look back. His lungs burned as he sprinted, weaving between parked cars, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. The bus station was ahead, just a few yards away. He could see the schedule board, the waiting passengers. A bus idled at the curb, its doors still open. His last chance. Ignoring the ache in his legs, Alex pushed harder, forcing himself into an all-out sprint. Then, a car engine roared behind him. Tires screeched. Headlights flashed. A blur of black metal came flying toward him. Too fast. Too close. Alex barely had time to react before the world tilted, and everything went dark. A sharp, burning pain ripped through Alex's body as his senses swam back into focus. His head throbbed, his ribs ached, and his vision blurred as he struggled to open his eyes. The muffled hum of a car engine surrounded him, the rhythmic thumping of tires against pavement pulsing through his skull. Where am I? Then it hit him. The chase. The black sedan. The headlights rushing toward him. He'd been caught. His eyes snapped open. The dim glow of streetlights flickered through tinted windows. He was in the back seat of a moving car, hands bound in front of him with thick zip ties. His backpack, the money, was gone. A man sat in the driver's seat, one hand gripping the wheel, the other resting near his hip, where Alex spotted the unmistakable outline of a gun. And beside him, in the passenger seat, was the man from the store. The one who had grabbed him. The one who had chased him down. "Look who's awake," the man said without turning around. His voice was cool, almost amused. "Gave us quite a bit of trouble, kid." Alex's throat was dry. His mind raced. He was trapped. No way out. "Where?" His voice came out hoarse. He swallowed hard. "Where are you taking me?" The driver chuckled under his breath. "Someplace quiet." Alex's stomach twisted. That wasn't good. He had to think. Fast. He shifted, testing the strength of the zip ties. Too tight. No way to slip free. His eyes darted to the door handle. Locked. But they had made a mistake. They didn't check his pockets. His fingers curled around the cheap burner phone still tucked into his hoodie. His last lifeline. He took a slow, quiet breath, keeping his voice as steady as he could. "I don't know who you think I am," he said. "But I swear I don't know anything. I just found the jacket. That's it." The man in the passenger seat finally turned to face him. His eyes were cold, unreadable. "And yet you ran." Alex's mind raced. If he didn't come up with something, some way out, he wouldn't get another chance. Slowly, he shifted in his seat, angling his body so his bound hands were hidden from view. His fingers worked against the phone, blindly pressing the emergency dial button. 911. He couldn't talk, couldn't say a word without tipping them off. But if the dispatcher heard what was happening, the man studied him for a long moment, then leaned back with a smirk. "Let me tell you a little secret, kid." The driver chuckled again. "Oh, this is my favorite part." The man ignored him. His gaze stayed locked on Alex. "That jacket you bought for $5? It belonged to someone very important." Alex's pulse pounded. Someone who went missing. And let's just say, he didn't go quietly. His stomach dropped. "Now, imagine our surprise when you show up, running around with his money." Alex's heart slammed against his ribs. He didn't know what to say. The driver grinned. "So here's how this goes, kid. You tell us where the rest of it is." "There is no rest of it," Alex blurted. "That's all there was. I swear." Silence. Then the man in the passenger seat leaned forward, his smirk fading. You better hope that's true. The car slowed. Alex glanced out the window. They were pulling into a deserted lot. Nothing but cracked pavement and empty warehouses stretching into the night. A dead zone. No cameras. No witnesses. His pulse hammered. The dispatcher had to be listening. Had to be sending someone. But would they get here in time? The car came to a stop. The driver shifted into park. End of the road. The man in the passenger seat reached for the door handle. Then, sirens. Blinding red and blue lights flooded the car. The driver cursed, reaching for his gun, but it was too late. Tires screeched as police cars swarmed the lot. Shouts filled the air. Hands up! Out of the vehicle! The two men froze. Alex barely had time to process what was happening before the doors were yanked open. Rough hands pulling him out. Strong arms caught him as his knees buckled. You okay, kid? A voice asked. Alex blinked up at the officer, the full weight of everything crashing down on him. His hands still shook, his breath came fast. But he was alive. The two men were dragged from the car, weapons confiscated, faces slammed against the pavement. Alex barely heard their protests. All he could do was watch as the officers moved toward the trunk, toward his backpack. They unzipped it. Stacks of cash spilled onto the ground. A low whistle. Well, an officer muttered. Looks like this kid just cracked open a case we've been working for a long time. Alex's head spun. What was this all about? He finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. One of the officers glanced at him. That jacket? It belonged to an undercover agent who went missing a year ago. We thought the case was cold. Alex's stomach twisted. An agent. That's who the money belonged to. That's who they were after. And now, because of a $5 thrift store jacket, the entire operation had been blown wide open. A hand clapped his shoulder. Come on, kid. Let's get you checked out. As they led him toward an ambulance, Alex cast one last look at the jacket that changed everything. Maybe he had thought it was just a lucky find. But in the end, it wasn't luck. It was fate.